This episode is brought to you by GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco. Get the most out of your vehicle with GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco original equipment. The only parts designed, engineered, tested, and backed by General Motors. You can find your perfect fit for most makes and models and choose from 3 tiers of parts, including GM OE or gold and silver aftermarket parts. Visit gmparts.com for more information.
This is the Long Island Report on 107.1 WLIR. Using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Good afternoon. This is the Long Island Report. This is Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is my esteemed colleague and good friend, Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party, as well as the County Chair of Suffolk County. Welcome back, Jesse. You were missed. I hope you're feeling better.
I am. It's great to be here. Happy New Year, and I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday. And I missed you guys, but I'm glad that you guys did. You and our
Curtis
co-host did a great job.
Yeah.
Curtis Leo did a great job in my absence. So
Well,
it's great to be back in the seat with you, and especially with New Year and a whole bunch of new topics coming forward.
Well, some of the new topics and some of the problem is certain things won't go away. They keep rearing their ugly head. But I want to begin. First, I want to make note of the fact that we lost Pope Benedict, who
Yes.
I'm not a Catholic, but I had a great deal of respect for him. He was a man of great kindness and generosity of spirit. He was a great intellectual. He believed in the dignity of man. He believed in building bridges between different races and religions. He was quite a remarkable historical figure, and we were lucky to have him. And he was ultimately one of the most modest of modest men, because he never really wanted any of the positions that he was elevated to. He never wanted to be, a bishop or monsignor or a cardinal, and certainly he didn't want to be pope. But he was brought along because his integrity, his character, and his human decency compelled people to say, "This is the man."
I agree with you. I think that he was a shining light, not only to the members of the Catholic faith and Christians, but I think that throughout the globe. His humanitarianism, and I think that what you just said embodies what he did in his life. He never sought positions of authority or grandeur through the church. It was more about him. It was about service, and that's the humility that we need and we require in our men and women who lead in worship, our houses of worship. Even this, he was the first pope in 600 years to resign. Typically, a pope would last until his passing, but in this case, he knew it was time to pass the torch on, and Pope Francis has held that as the pontiff since his resignation. It's a loss for humanity. It's a loss for society. It's a loss for Catholics and Christians throughout this world. But like you said, you described as a man of kindness, a man of service, a man of humility, and a servant of God. And that's what I think we're missing most in this society is, not to add politics to it, but just, as I go through life, I've seen that for some reason or another, there's a small, loud segment of our society that wants to eliminate and snuff out the role of God in our society, in our country. And I believe that's a mistake because that void is being filled by wokeism. It's being filled by evil. And we are a country of faith. We are a people of faith, and we need more than ever, leaders of faith like Pope Benedict to be with us.
Well, I will tell you, one of the most interesting courses I took in college was the sociology of religion. It talks about the human need to believe in something bigger than the individual self. That there's a force that created us, however you want to call that God figure, or that force that led to the creation of all life in the world and the universe. But there is a need to have that. And when people reject that need, they're denying their own humanity. And you correctly point out, Jesse, that they substitute a secular religion. I mean, all this environmental culture is based on having a need to believe in something larger than themselves. Now, some of them are very well intentioned. I think some of them misguided. I think they're extremists. But obviously, we want to have a sound environment for our children, our grandchildren. We want the world to survive. But we cannot substitute a secular drive for the religious, spiritual need that people really have that impulse towards. It's just the way we're constructed. We can deny it, but it's there. So, Jesse,
I totally agree.
So let me shift gears, and you and I are fortunate. We may be getting Congressman-elect Nick LaLota from the 1st Congressional District out in Long Island, Suffolk County, your bailiwick, from the House floor, because the last couple of days, I have to tell you, as a House Democrat, have been absolutely astounding to me. So let me give you my views as an outsider looking in.
Sure.
Now, at a John Catsimatidis Father Alex breakfast out in the Hamptons past summer, you and I had the opportunity to spend time with Congressman McCarthy, the minority leader of the United States House of Representatives, a Republican leader. And both of us were quite taken by his common sense, his vision, his knowledge of history and of public policy. He understands what has to be done. He understands what true leadership is. He knows what it is to have to put together an organization to do these nationwide campaigns to win the control of the United States House of Representatives. There would not be control of the United States House of Representatives by the Republican Party, in my opinion, Jesse, but for Kevin McCarthy and his vision and his leadership, his fundraising drive, his organizational skills, his ability to create relationships all over the country. I think he's a very impressive guy. And I'm deeply saddened by what's going on. I'm deeply saddened not only for McCarthy, who deserves better, because all the Republicans owe him a debt of gratitude for winning the majority in the House, but I'm sad for the Republican Party, and I'm sad for the country, because as you and I have discussed, it's very important to have a viable two-party system, checks and balances against the drive of the other political party, particularly since the other political party, my party, is being controlled and dominated by the left wing, the extremists, the socialists, the working family party types who just want to tax and spend and regulate and impose rules on people and not let people live and carry out their own dreams of independence and free speech and entrepreneurship. So I think it's a very sad thing to lose that opportunity. And I think, and I'll get back to it in a minute, and we talk about this with the congressman-elect when he comes on, but I think this is very, very troubling, and I think the Republicans are making a big mistake. They're squandering their capital. They can't do anything to get organized, Jesse. They can't swear in their members yet until you have a speaker. They can't organize committees. They can't make committee assignments. They can't hire staff. They can't do anything one needs to do, set a legislative agenda. They can't do oversight hearings. They can't do strategic planning as an entity until they have a speaker. What say you?
Well, first of all, I agree with you. I think the issue with Kevin McCarthy, I don't believe it's philosophical. I don't believe it's about his plans to empower members of the House of Representatives, his plans to take on inflation, Putin, the energy crisis, crime in the country, or conduct investigations that need to be conducted. I don't believe that's the problem. I believe it's a personal issue with some of these members, and that's where the problem is. Now, listen, I know there are a lot of headlines, and Democrats have been portraying this, and I think there's a taping of this show. We're entering the sixth round of voting for the Speaker of the House. They're taking great, they're using language like chaos and drama. And I admit that it's messy. It's messy. But democracy was established to be a little messy, to have debate, to have, everything out in the open. At the very least, our process here in America is out in the open. It's not, handled behind closed doors. It's not a totalitarian government. One person runs everything, a dictatorship like in Putin or in China or in any other third world country. This is where the members are coming together. They're debating, they're discussing, and the process is going to be better at this. I hope that Kevin McCarthy comes out of this as a speaker. He's earned it. He's earned it based on politics, and he's earned it based on a vision he has put forward. But it'll come to an end. I believe that it has to come to an end. I think it was 1923 or sometime on the dawning of the Civil War, where it lasted 133 ballots. I don't think we'll get there to 133 ballots. I think common sense will prevail and compromise will take place, and we'll move forward with Speaker from the Republican chamber. And then we'll get to doing the people's business. My only problem is that there are some hardy problems here in America right now. American taxpayers, American families, American small businesses are facing, like we talked about, high inflation. The fact that their purchasing power has been reduced. The fact that we have, totalitarian governments, knocking on our shores. We still have terrorism moving forward, and Iran being a proxy, engaging in proxy wars and battles with American forces and such. So, those issues and topics need to be addressed. The border needs to be addressed. Term limits for our members need to be addressed. I believe that it's time that, we go through this process. It's a little messy. We'll get through it. But time is of the essence. We need to get down to do the people's business.
No, I think that's exactly right. I've been studying this in the last few days as we were coming up on this vote for the speakership. And what people don't understand is if this is not handled correctly, all the momentum will be lost with respect to the agenda of the Republican Party to be a countervailing force and to do real legislative investigation, oversight, real legislation to stop the excess spending and excess taxation, to deal with the issues, as you correctly point out, energy and the border. They won't be able to do substance. And the more time they spend on this, the less time they have to do real work and deal with matters of real concern. And that's a loss for this country, and that's why it's sad for this country. So I was looking at it.
I think that we have, any Congress has got maybe 11 months of real work to do because, come next December, they are in even November, they're in full re-election mode. And we know that's, we have a president that's going to have to be elected in 24. So that's going to be problematic as we go there. So we really did that. You touched upon it. This is messy. It's got the drama and the chaos that the Democrats and the mainstream media are portraying it as. It's democracy. It's the way our founding fathers have established this process to move forward, especially, and who benefits from this? It's funny. You mentioned about a two-party system. Who honestly benefits from this? Who benefits from this are the minority voices, but the political minority voices, whether they be Democrats or the members of the Freedom Caucus or those members that want to make sure that their voices are heard, that their proposals, their ideas are being considered. That is our system of government. It's designed so that those voices and ideas and policies that are amongst those not in power can still be heard and be given its full consideration. Correct? Am I wrong on that?
Well, I agree with you, but the problem is the longer this goes on, you can't govern, and you're losing respect for the Republican leadership. They're showing that they cannot govern. I'm telling you, as a Democrat, I want the Republicans to be able to govern and to be a check and balance against the extremists in the Democratic Party. They're not doing that, and they're destroying their own brand. They're not showing that they're grown-ups, that they can move on. Because the art of the legislative process, and I know this from my own experience, having been the general counsel to the New York City Council, the art of the legislative process is building consensus, compromise, moving to the center. No group is going to get everything they want. And I think you were correct, Jesse, when you said this is a matter of personalities rather than issues, because fundamentally, all the Republicans have more in common vis-a-vis the issues together as opposed to what the Democrats want. So the enemy or the opponent is not within their own party, within their own caucus, if they would just wake up and realize that. The real thing to deal with is, do they think it's a good idea that we have an open border with the fentanyl crisis, with the gangs coming in, with the Chinese cutting a deal with the cartels, with the potentiality of terrorists flowing through when these people are escaped and they're not captured? I mean, these are serious issues, and there has to come a time you have to make a deal. And if they refuse to do that, let me tell you a couple of gimmicks out there. Number one, if people vote present, it takes the number down from the 218, okay? The 218 is the magic number to elect speaker if everybody's voting. But if people vote present, that number of 218 goes down. So theoretically, somebody can be elected speaker with less than 218. But what that does, by the way, is that opens the door for the Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader of the Democrats, to be elected speaker, because right now he has a solid 212. So if they start voting present, that is, the Democrats start voting present, that could jam up this so that McCarthy is a loser against Hakeem Jeffries. People have to pay attention to that, because after all, the American people voted for a Republican Congress, not a Democratic Congress. The other thing they can do is they can pass a resolution saying plurality. So you can have a plurality, and again, who has the advantage in the plurality? The Democrats do with Hakeem Jeffries, because they got the 212 locked up. And the Republicans have a dissident group of, 15, 20. And that's a problem. So when you do the calculations on a plurality election, the Democrats can win again. And is that really responsible for people like Gates and Bobart and some of these others saying, well, it doesn't matter to us if we have a Democratic speaker? No one elected them as Republicans to elect a Democratic speaker. That's wrong. That's a betrayal of the principles of the Republican Party, the public policy stances that your party stands for, the commitment to bring back America to the center, to common sense. And these people have to grow up, Jesse. What say you?
Well, they have to. I agree with you. They have to get over their petty issues and move forward and put the agenda of the American people first and foremost. And like I said, this is a personal issue with 20 or so. And just think about it. We have individuals like Mitch McConnell, who's on the moderate side of the Republican Party, and you have individuals like Jim Jordan, a member of the Freedom Caucus, who has placed the name of Kevin McCarthy into nomination. We have members of the Freedom Caucus voting for Kevin McCarthy. So I really don't understand. You're right. We have to get moving with the business of governing and serving the people, the American people. We have to start moving forward on the border security, on attacking inflation properly, not with these bogus spending plans like they did under the Biden administration the first 2 years with an all one-party system in D.C. That was power unchecked. But here's the thing. I think that if you saw the Democrats, and this is why they haven't done it to this point, in my estimation, that they haven't tried a power trip like that about reducing the number of members in the chamber or passing a resolution on plurality, is because that would galvanize the Republican base. Because you're right. None of these individuals, they may have, 20 of them may have a problem with Kevin McCarthy on a personal basis, but they will not vote and allow a Democrat to lead their chamber, because that just takes the gavels out of their hands. So I think that we're safe with that measure. But again, it's a little messy. We have to get through this. We should get through this quickly, because the most important thing these officials have is to take that oath of office and start serving the American people based on what they were sent to Washington to do.
Well, let's change the topic, but not the overall subject about messiness of government. The governor of the state of New York, Kathy Hochul, got reelected. She nominated Judge Hector LaSalle, who comes from Long Island. I think he's from Nassau, Jesse. He's a presiding
from Suffolk County.
So is he from Suffolk?
Yes, he is.
Oh, okay. He's from Suffolk County. He was an assistant district attorney out there, I think. He was
an assistant district attorney and a deputy bureau chief in his last tenure. His last tenure was, I believe, 2002 to 2008. Then he became a member of he was elected to the Supreme Court.
Right. And then he went on from the state Supreme Court, the trial court, to the appellate division, and he's a presiding justice of the Second Department,
Yes.
which takes care of, Brooklyn and Queens and Long Island, a very powerful, important position being presiding justice. And they do a lot of law work. An inside secret that lawyers and judges know is 90-95% of all the appellate work in the state of New York and by the judges comes out of the appellate division. It's not the Court of Appeals. Court of Appeals is what they call a certiorari court, which means you have to get leave granted to go up to the Court of Appeals. You don't have an automatic right to go up to the New York Court of Appeals. So most of the appellate work is done there. And he's been a very distinguished judge. And I don't know him personally, but I know some of my former colleagues know him very, very well, think very highly of Justice LaSalle. And I think he's now run into some very, very strong headwinds, and so has Governor Hochul in a choice, because the left wing, the progressives, say, no way do they want this man. They came out when this process began. They tried to influence the selection committee, which is a nonpartisan committee, to try to get the best and the brightest people as nominees. And it's a very important independent process. And what they did is they pushed through their efforts to try to stop. They came up with a list of people they wanted, and they came up with a list of people they said no go. And Justice LaSalle was one of the no-goes, and Hochul, to a credit, nominated him anyway. And now you have all these state senators, the extreme left, saying they're not going to vote for him, and you have, a dozen state senators saying they're not going to vote for him. So the irony here is, again, talking about the dirty and messy business of politics, to save this nominee for the Democratic governor, you may need the state senators who are Republicans to support this nominee. And Gianaris, who's a deputy majority leader, but who's a real force in the state Senate, he really uses Andrew Stewart Cousins, the majority leader, as a front for his own agenda, and he's a wholly owned subsidiary of the Working Family Party and the Democratic Socialists. Gianaris wants to stop this nomination from going through, and the chair of the Judiciary Committee, a senator who happens to be my state senator in Manhattan, Brad Hoylman, said, well, we'll see if it even gets to the floor for a vote. How undemocratic is that? They should allow every member of the state Senate to be heard on this issue, and every member should have their vote recorded on this. What do you say?
I am aware Justice LaSalle. In fact, I was just attended his robing ceremony amongst other judges in Suffolk County earlier this week. He was on for re-election. He was re-elected with bipartisan support. He was cross-endorsed because here on Long Island we take a different view of it. Politicizing the judiciary is something that I think here on Long Island, specifically in Suffolk County, we don't want to do. We look for the best. We look for the brightest. We look for those who are going to be the best minds with integrity, fairness, and transparency to place on the bench for the purposes of, serving proper justice. And
judges should not be politicians, and they should not be carrying the political or ideological agendas of a political party. Their job is not to be a rubber stamp, but to fairly deal with the cases before them on the issues, particularly the Court of Appeals on the constitutional. Kevin has given us a sign. We're going to
okay, we'll come back for this.
We'll come back. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party. This is the Long Island Report. Keep listening for more important and interesting conversation.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
It's the Long Island Report, using common sense. talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia on 107.1 WLIR.
This is the Long Island Report. We're back. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. At the break, we were talking about the nomination of presiding justice of the Appellate Division, 2nd Department, Hector LaSalle, to become the New York Court of Appeals. And I'm deeply troubled by the partisan ideological fight that's being waged by the left wing of the Democratic Party against him. They seem to believe that judges should be politicians who should rubber stamp whatever the left wing of the Democratic Party in the state assembly and the state senate want. And they don't understand the role of judges. The role of judges is to deal with the legal issues, not to be spear carriers for the politicians. What say you, Jesse?
Well, I completely agree with you. And, you know, we opened up the show talking about the messiness of democracy and how that's okay as we watch the speakership go to a 6th and further ballots there. That's supposed to be there. But this is not the same thing. This is the political weaponization of the judiciary by the left, you know, the left progressive socialists. Let's not forget, how did this vacancy come across? That is because the left went nuts because Judge Diafiore, she did what was right, followed the law, and ruled on a redistricting plan in the Court of Appeals. That raised the anger of the left. It then started a snowballing effect to impugn her integrity and for her and to her character. Speaking to her character, the judiciary was bigger than her, and she resigned and she left it open. So now the governor comes forward with another nomination. Again, as you mentioned, it was a process of a selection committee was supposed to be stacked to prevent decent, good, fair judges from ascending to his position. And the governor moved forward with this nomination. Now, listen, I've had my problems with the 2nd Department of the Appellate Division. It is where Republican political and election cases go to die. I've had case after case be won at the local level in the Supreme Court, only to be overturned, and sometimes in a very curious manner, how they overturned that. The last example of that being redistricting when the outgoing Democratic majority tried to steamroll a new redistricting plan in Suffolk County before the end of 2021, to the point where they held a vote on a holiday, December 31st, in their chamber. And the appellate division, curiously, it was one appellate justice that was able to lift a stay on our victories at the Supreme Court level. So there are problems in the second department about fairness and such, but I believe that any justice should be given in the state of New York their ability to come forward, especially if nominated from their party, and their party has the control of the chamber, in this case the Senate, should come down for a vote. I believe that everyone should look at this impartially. They should look to make sure and see that it's right and then cast their votes. But the problem is the left, the socialist Democrats that have run this country, and specifically this state, into the ground of bankruptcy and crime-ridden, where people are fleeing, they won't give up. They want to impose their political will and political mandate and establish a litmus test on the judiciary, and that's wrong.
Right. What they want to do is they want to destroy. Remember, the way the system works in New York State as well as in the United States and other states is you have 3 branches of government. You have the legislature that makes the laws, the executive who enforces the laws, and the judiciary, which deals with disputes and constitutionality of the laws. And you want to have an independent judiciary. If it's merely a rubber stamp, then you'd only have the political branches. The judiciary is not a political branch. It was never intended to be a political branch. It should be carrying the water and the agenda of the political branches. It should be dealing with the law and the Constitution fairly and impartially. That's their job, to be fair and impartial without fear of consequence or fear of favor. And that's a terrible thing. And Gianaris not only attacked, this nomination, but then he went on to attack Judge Diafiore, and then he also attacked the 3 other judges who voted with DeFiore on the case involving redistricting, saying that they need to be pushed aside and they need to be replaced. So clearly what Gianaris wants to do is he wants to court pack with left-wingers who will just rubber stamp what he wants. That makes him a very dangerous man. And for somebody who's a graduate of Harvard Law School, he should know better. And his personal attacks on judges raises real ethical concerns about how he's conducting himself as a lawyer. His job is not to attack judges personally. He's just supposed to respect the process. Now, you also said...
So under this top Democrat, think about it, under this top Democrat, you're only a good judge if you agree with me.
Exactly.
And my band of and my gang. That's all. And that's wrong. And that's why Gianaris, and let's not forget, Gianaris is the one who was embarrassed mightily by this entire redistricting process. Why? Because he put forth a map congressionally and in the state legislature that was greedy for Democrats. It was out of kilter. It was out of the bounds of law.
And it violated the state constitution. And it violated the state constitution, which is exactly what the Court of Appeals said.
And that's why he's trying to exact revenge on those justices that still sit and voted against his plan and now against the governor's nominee.
Well, on a political level, Jesse, what are your thoughts about if as a former Supreme Court justice, I say the integrity of the judiciary is a very, very big matter to have fair and honest government. But in a larger, and I think that's very important, but in a larger political sense, in the Hochul point of view, it also means that she's going to be weakened terribly in her fight with the legislative left, and that's a problem. And what really concerns me overall is a governmental process, because you have all this crazy left-wing legislation coming through, all this taxing and spending by the Democrats in the state legislature. They're doing a lot of bad public policy. People are fleeing, as you point out, from the state in droves. We've lost almost 500,000 people in the last couple of years have fled, first for COVID, but then, of course, the lawlessness and the crime epidemic and the taxes and the regulations. And they're not being replaced by productive people. They're being replaced by illegal migrants who are coming in, who have then drained the resources of the tax-paying people who work hard here and who are trying to make a living for themselves and for their families and contribute to the community. So they're being replaced by people who are not part of this culture, who are breaking the law by jumping the border. The Biden administration is a co-conspirator in this illegal act of jumping the border. If I try to jump your fence in your house out in Suffolk County, I would be guilty of trespass. When you jump the fence of the United States boundaries, you're guilty of violation of the immigration laws. You have no right to be here on a legal basis. You only have a right to go through a legal process, not a legal process. Illegal processes destroy respect for the integrity of the law. And if you don't have a border, you don't have a country. And so what they're doing here is they're replacing the good, productive people with the illegal immigrants. The progressives are going to destroy this state. If they continue to do this, they have to be stopped. That's why the Court of Appeals has to stop them when they're acting unconstitutionally. What say you? I
agree with you. And here's the thing. Just think of it. And when we go to Governor Hochul, we're seeing that she's weak. We're seeing that she's captured by the left. Because, you know, when you say what you want to say about Governor Cuomo, at the very least, he knew how to bargain. And in this business of politics, if you're going to give something, you got to get something. And here's a case where the legislature had a special session at the end of the year, not to address high taxes, not to address
crime,
failing education system, not to address crime rates. They went and they gave themselves a raise to $142,000 to basically create and limit outside income of members of the legislature, to basically create a career politician, a professional class politician. That's what they were doing. Not a citizen politician. It's not someone who owns a small business on Main Street or a civic association president or a chamber leader or a teacher or anyone. No. These are now professional politicians getting a raise. And she signed it without any
And what did she get for it?
Get anything back? Nothing.
What did she get for it?
She got nothing.
So,
nothing. In fact, they thumbed their nose at her, and now they're going after her nominee for this position, for the LaSalle position. So this is going to be a problem because either she's going to be captured or she's not strong. And it's exactly what Lee Zeldin said during the entire campaign for the last 18 months.
Well, the difference between Kathy Hochul and Lee Zeldin is that Lee Zeldin had a real vision of what he was trying to do as a candidate if he became governor. He gave you what the agenda was.
Yes.
A safe state, lower taxes, less regulation, promote the entrepreneurial spirit, try to get the state moving again, stop the outflow of the productive people from the state to down south to Texas. He knew what he wanted to do, and all Hochul said is, trust me, I'll take care of it. Trust me, I'll take care of it. And what did she take care of? I'm still waiting for it. She never cleaned up this outrage, the so-called bail reform, which is a consumer fraud. That all it did is reform the opportunities for the lawless to intimidate the law-abiding and to raise the crime rates throughout the state of New York. That's what she did. She didn't get anything for it. She tries to get a highly regarded judge appointed as a chief judge, and he's not left enough for them, so they try to destroy him. They attack all the other judges who voted against Gianaris' unconstitutional action. I mean, this is serious business. So when people voted in November and they voted for Hochul versus Zeldin, as Obama famously said, elections have consequences, and I'm not happy with the consequences of this election unless Kathy Hochul will stand up and start fighting to protect this state and its citizens. It's time for a break. Kevin has given us the sign. We'll be back in a moment. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
It's the Long Island Report, using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia on 107.1 WLIR.
All right, this is the Long Island Report. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. We are honored and privileged to have Congressman-elect Nick LaLota from the 1st District out on Long Island, Suffolk County, a good friend of Chairman Garcia and mine, a wonderful public servant, a great military man. We're very fortunate to have you elected to the Congress, and I know you came off the floor. You're in the cloakroom. I was a page in the House of Representatives right after the War of 1812, so I remember the cloakroom very well. And I know you're there, but I want to know what's going on with Kevin McCarthy, and why won't that 20-odd group of Republicans, that far-right group, why don't, and I'm the House Democrat, why won't they get behind McCarthy, who's the right choice at the right time? What do these people want?
So great to be with you, Judge and Chairman. It's always a pleasure to be joining with you. And yes, I'm in the cloakroom, just 3 or 4 steps off the House floor, crammed into a phone booth that was made for somebody a little smaller than my size. So we have a little intimacy in this call. But yes, we're amidst the 6th ballot right now for House Speaker. And it's a bit of a groundhog day right now, where the 4th and 5th ballots came out the exact same way. It's probably going to be the same case here, and the 6th ballot is probably going to come out the same way as well, where you have about 202 House Republicans voting for Kevin McCarthy for House Speaker, and 19 or 20 voting against him. And this round's candidate is a gentleman, Byron Donalds from Florida. And I think that what you have here is it's not about Kevin McCarthy right now. Right now, it's 91% of House Republicans are unified behind one person who has a solid commitment to America, to improve our economy, our public safety, get our freedoms back, and hold the administration accountable. And 91% of House Republicans think that we should move forward with that agenda with this person. And yet here we are at Groundhog Day for the sixth ballot, having to get through this. I hope it ends sometime soon. But there's a lot of resolve in the room on all sides, and maybe quite some time before this is figured out.
Well, what I said to Jesse, and I also on my nightly appearances at Cats at Night, and Peter King and I discussed it, as well as David Paterson, Governor Paterson and I have discussed it. This is stymieing the ability of the Republicans to organize the House of Representatives. You can't even be sworn in until you have a speaker. You can't have committee assignments or chairmanships made. You can't hire staff. You're losing valuable time in doing the business of America. Don't these people realize that? Don't they care?
So there's going to come a point in time where, yes, we're going to have lost ground that we can't yet make up. But to put things in perspective, we've all stood in lines before, and we're on day 2 of this right now. And I've stood in lines as a consumer shopping for my kids, or as a military man getting gear for my sea bag. And sometimes that long wait is frustrating, but I hope there's a good thing at the end of this line, and that is the fulfillment of our commitment to America. It's embarrassing, Judge. I agree with you that it's taken more than 1 or 2 ballots to get this done. But in the grand scheme of things, if we lose a day or two, we should work doubly hard afterwards to ensure that we fulfill our commitment to America.
Congressman-elect, let me ask you this. What do you think the House Republicans, once they get organized, should be focusing on?
Well, I think we got to secure that damn border already. Republicans, Democrats, and Independents all agree that what is coming across that porous border under Secretary Mayorkas' watch, under President Biden's watch, is harming every community across America. Illegal people, drugs, weapons coming across that border, such that every state has now become a border state. We have those illegal people, drugs, and weapons in every state right now because of that porous border, which is magnified or amplified, rather, by sanctuary city policies. I think the number one thing that Congress should work on once we get this ordeal out of the way is focusing on securing that border already.
And what are your priorities for your first term, Nick?
I want to deliver for a Long Island, Judge. I think that Long Islanders aren't interested in the drama that's going on right now in Washington and elsewhere. They're just interested in having elected officials who can help their quality of life, help reduce their tax burden, help improve their safety, bring home some bacon to Long Island. That's what I intend to focus most of my time on, Judge.
And what committee assignments are you interested in, Congressman?
I'm eager to get onto either the House Armed Services Committee. You know my background, as a military officer, spent 11 years in a Navy uniform. I'd love to be a policymaker in our armed services to ensure that our men and women in uniform have the resources, the tools, and the policies they need to fight the next war and to come home safely. But I've also started the conversation to get onto the Appropriations Committee, and that's not what freshmen find themselves on, but that's a good way for me to deliver for Long Island. But we have quite some time, probably a few weeks before we have any sort of certainty on committees.
Jesse, your turn.
Yeah, Nick, maybe the listeners, just to remind them, you were a naval officer, Annapolis grad. You served and you headed up the Tactical Operations Centers of Warships. And in your public service career, you were a commissioner of the Board of Elections where you counted votes. Why is it Kevin McCarthy? Now, I saw you on Fox News, and you were huddling close to him and such. Why hasn't he made you the whip to get those extra 20 votes? You know how to count votes. Go find them.
This is true. I haven't asked for that position just yet. My 40-some-odd freshman classmates and I, we've been in close contact with leadership and with each other to ensure that we're moving in the right direction as well. But maybe, Chairman, I'll apply for that spot next semester. For that.
There you go. But listen, for the listeners of Long Island, who are now getting a lesson in civics right there in front of our eyes right now, share with them something that they don't see on TV, that they're not reading in the newspapers. Like Newsday is saying that the GOP is in disarray, when actually this is just a little, I think Congressman Gallagher said it best. Democracy is messy, so this is a little messy, and we'll get to the people's business sooner, hopefully, rather than later. But can you share anecdotally something that behind the scenes that we don't see. Maybe what conversations you've seen or actions you've seen, or maybe even something that went on. I mean, it's been public reports that Kevin McCarthy was like pounding his fist on a podium in a private conference with the Republican caucus.
Yeah, so I think that some amount of this debate and dissension is actually good for America, good for the conference, and good for the process. Right now, McCarthy and the folks who are most strongly supporting him have a strong open door to ensure that all voices within the conference are heard, and thus, voices across America are heard. And we've changed many of the rules. We're about to change many of the rules in our conference to ensure that there is a more bottom-up leadership style here, that individual members have a greater say in legislation, a greater say in budgeting, and a greater say in the process. The Freedom Caucus members brought to the table their desire to change on a lot of those issues, and their concerns have been assuaged for the most part. So, we're in day 2 of this right now, but I would say that as a whole, we've made progress on ensuring that we have a rules package, a process by which the Congress has to follow this 118th Congress to ensure the American people have a great shot at a balanced budget, a secure border, getting their freedoms back, and holding the administration accountable. What is not being reported as much on the news is the progress that's been made on those rules.
Well, let me ask you this. Who's going to blink, this dissident group of 20 or Kevin McCarthy and his supporters?
That's the $1 million question, I would guess. I know that McCarthy has said that he won't get out of the race until his last 4 friends leave him. And he's got a lot more than 4 friends who won't leave him. So that's what I've heard. There's some nuances of the voting, such that an abstention by somebody who was against you is actually worth like a half a vote. It's been inaccurately reported that it takes exactly 218 to win this election. That's not the case. It takes a majority of the votes present. And if some Democrats, or if some of these 19 or 20 merely don't show up to the vote, which may happen again at 5 o'clock this afternoon or midnight or 3 a.m. or whatever else, and we know when it gets into late hours, some folks don't show up. When each one of those adversarial votes doesn't show up, it's like a half a vote for McCarthy. So, we should bake that into the equation as well to predict where this thing may go to.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that under the rules, as I understand it, you have to vote for a named candidate. If you just vote for president, it takes that number of 218 down. Is that correct, Nick?
Indeed. Or if you're merely not here,
right?
If you're in your house office building, if you're in your DC hotel, if you're in your district, again, that not being here drives down the minimum number of votes required to become speaker.
And see, what I'm concerned about, remember, as you know, I'm the House Democrat, but you and I and Chairman Garcia had the privilege and pleasure of meeting with during the summer at the Southampton breakfast with Congressman McCarthy, the minority leader, and we were all very impressed by his leadership skills, his wisdom, his knowledge of history, his good common sense. What I'm afraid of is if you have this dissident group that won't budge, and you have people taking that number down, that you could wind up inadvertently electing, and I have nothing against Hakeem Jeffries, who's a Democrat, but on a personal level, but wouldn't it be ironic if this led to the result that you had a Democratic speaker, whereas you had a technical majority of the Republican Party in control of the House?
Yeah, I think you're being nice, Judge, by characterizing that circumstance as ironic. It would be absolutely pathetic, embarrassing, and a tremendous discredit to the whole process that the American people put us here. They gave us a majority, a slim majority, but they gave the Republican Party a majority in the House of Representatives at this moment in time to put America back on the right track. And if somehow we screw that up, and our screwing it up led to Hakeem Jeffries becoming speaker, that would be a total travesty and something that these 19 or 20 should be totally ashamed about.
Well, Congressman-elect Nick LaLota, we appreciate you coming on the show. You have important work to do on the floor of the House. I think Chairman Garcia is right. I think they ought to make you the honorary whip. I think you should start whipping up those votes speaking to those 20 and try to explain to them, give them a reality check. It's time to be responsible to the American people and to the other 91% of the Republican Party in the House of Representatives to do the right thing, to elect McCarthy as Speaker, and to move on to do the people's work. So we'll let you get out of that little booth in the cloakroom. They still have the snack stand there in the cloakroom, by the way?
Yes, they have the most average grilled cheeses and the most below average hot dogs in D.C.
Okay, so my best advice to you, Congressman-elect, is stay away from that snack stand. Get back on the.
Follow that over, Judge. No problem on that.
Get back on the floor. Thank you very, very much for being on the Long Island Report with Chairman Jesse Garcia and me. We deeply appreciate it, and we wish you well.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Be well.
This is the Long Island Report. We'll be back in a moment. We're taking a break. We'll be back for our last segment. That was very interesting, Jesse, and we'll pick up on that in a couple of minutes.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
It's the Long Island Report, using common sense, talking Long Island issues. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia on 107.1 WLIR.
This is the Long Island Report. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is my good friend and esteemed colleague, Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse and I just had the privilege and pleasure of being on the phone with Congressman-elect Nick LaLota of the 1st District from Suffolk County out on Long Island, who's been out there fighting the fight to try to get Minority Leader McCarthy the speakership. And Jesse urged him to start whipping some votes because he had experience in his previous jobs of whipping up votes to try to get McCarthy going so that the Republican Party can get themselves organized and start doing the people's business. So we had a firsthand look at what's going on in Washington as history is being made. Jesse, I want to switch. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you said it perfectly, Your Honor.
Okay. So I want to switch gears. You know, the border crisis is only escalating, it's only exploding, it's only getting worse. The numbers they're not talking about, and I don't know if they're honest numbers, because I think they lowball numbers all the time. Not talking about 6 million people that have floated through the United States since Biden is taken over. I mean, that's a horrific number, and it's only getting worse. And as you've said to me when on the break, you know, at least we have a stay on Title 42, but I don't know what the Supreme Court will do on 42. They need to have a rationale based on public health. By the way, and I discussed this last week, I think, with Professor Alan Dershowitz, the Harvard Law School constitutional expert. I discussed with him, you know, there are other, and as well as Andy McCarthy, the former Assistant U.S. Attorney in the Southern District. The issue is you don't have to rely on public health in Title 42 because the President of the United States has the power to enforce the border and to stop the flow of immigration based on national security issues. There are statutes that allow him to do that. So therefore, I respectfully submit that this president and this Homeland Secretary are not fulfilling their obligations. And I think it may be time to raise the issue whether these are in fact impeachable offenses by the President of the United States and the Homeland Secretary. What say you?
Well, certainly I think that there's a number of individuals, and these are Democratic state representatives along the border. There's Democratic mayors in New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, that have all said that at the very least, and Republicans along the full spectrum of politics have said, you know, it may be time for the Homeland Security Secretary to go. And he either goes to resignation or by being fired or by being impeached. I do think that, I think the Democrats have overused the impeachment tool as a political weapon. But I don't think that the Republican Congress should ever take that arrow out of its quill. because when it comes to the president, if he is not honoring his sworn oath to protect this country and its citizens, we have to make that consideration. But certainly, I believe that when you hear the mayors of those border towns who are Republicans, Democrats, you hear Republicans throughout this country saying that we need to take some action, and the policies that are being enacted through the Homeland Security Office are the ones that are on first and foremost. And that secretary, his hide should be brought before Congress. There should be hearings, and at the very least, they should be considering impeachment of that secretary.
Well, see, the problem is, for a while, everybody said, well, it's the border towns in Texas that have the problem. Well, we're all a border town now, Jesse, because this is flowing all across the country. There is no safe place from this flow of illegal immigrants. We don't know if they're terrorists. We don't know if they're cartel members. We don't know if they're carrying loathsome diseases. They're not being tested. They're yelling and screaming about kids wearing masks again. Who's testing these people for all kinds of diseases? COVID and other tuberculosis, other diseases? Nobody's. They're getting a free ride, and they're being shipped around the country. And, you know, just recently, the governor of Colorado started shipping people to New York, and he's a Democrat. So it's not just the governor of Florida who's a Republican, or the governor of Texas is a Republican. Now you have the Democratic governor of Colorado shipping people to New York. Now, Mayor Adams, who I know and have a lot of respect for, he said that he needs more money, but he's also said this border policy, this open border, is an embarrassment. It's more than an embarrassment, Mr. Mayor. It's a disgrace, and it's a threat to our national sovereignty and our national security. This must be dealt with, and asking for more money to take care of this population that keeps increasing by the day when they flow in. It's not the money that you need to give them services here. They should not be in this country until they go through a legal process. What you need to do is you need to secure the border, not spend money in the cities to feed them and shelter them and give them health care and education. They shouldn't be here until they get here legally. What say you?
I completely agree with you. And let's find. And when I was talking about the border towns, I was just using them as examples of political members of the political parties that have all been stating about the need for impeachment of either the president or certainly the Secretary of Homeland Security. But you're absolutely right. We are all border towns now. And when you see the governor, a Democratic governor from Colorado, shipping illegal immigrants to New York and New York City, you know this is not a political problem. This is not a one-party political problem or a political stunt. This is real life. We are, as you pointed out, a border town everywhere we are.
Well, Chairman Garcia, it's been a pleasure to have you back on, alive and well and kicking. Very interesting times we live in. The great Chinese curse to live through interesting times. Next week, we'll pick up on some of the problems that China's been doing, which is the revisitation of COVID across the world, which is a real problem, which is worthy of a real discussion, and we should be talking about that. But for now, this is the Long Island Report. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg, signing off for Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and our guest, Congressman-elect Nick LaLota of Long Island, and we look forward to being with you next week. We hope your families are safe and well. Thank you.